So
what? I was just about to ask you, how much you get this for back then?
$300.
$300.
300 bucks.
Yeah, you know, both immigrants from Italy, and so the car became something that tied us together. We've been, I don't know, best.
Texas Metal and Bill Carlton gave us a show we would never forget. It has everything from the builds to the reveals, and even the faces we watched every week. But they couldn't have done it without the cast standing beside him. These guys transformed some of the most unforgettable trucks on television. But as of today, some are fighting battles the show never talked about. So what really happened to the faces behind Texas Metal? These are 10 tragic departures, and you'll want to stick around for the last name on this list. It might move you more than you expect. Cleave, Extensive Metal Works, and Texas Metal have introduced us to plenty of memorable faces over the years. But not all of them walk on two legs, and none of them have a story quite like this one. Meet Cleave, the Carlton family's dog, rescued from a dog-fighting situation at just 2 years old and given a second life that eventually made him something close to a shop mascot. He's shown up around Extensive and in Texas Metal content ever since, enough that his own family describes him as having touched many people through his appearances tied to the show. For years, that was the whole story. A rescue dog who found his footing, bonded tightly with the family's older dog, and became a fixture of the Carlton household. Then, recently, everything changed in a very tragic way. Presley Carlton, Bill's daughter, shared the devastating news that Cleave had been diagnosed with large cell B lymphoma. The change in him had been sudden, she said, noting he'd lost weight and simply wasn't himself anymore. A stark shift from the happy, energetic dog he'd been just a week earlier. The prognosis is serious. Without treatment, the family was told Cleave has less than a month left. With chemotherapy, he could have more than a year of good quality life. The family has already spent a significant amount on emergency care and diagnostics just to get him this far. And as of the fundraiser's writing, he was set to meet with an oncologist to begin discussing treatment. Presley launched a GoFundMe to help cover the cost of Cleave's chemotherapy and ongoing care, explaining simply that every contribution goes toward giving their family as much time together as possible. Cleave's story isn't over yet, but as of today, he is out of the show, and whether he will ever return to the show remains a mystery. That mystery continues with the next person on the list, Heath Moore. And speaking of health challenges, another person who experienced something just as serious was a fan favorite from the show's earliest seasons. Extensive Metal Works and Texas Metal have introduced viewers to no shortage of talented hands, but few earned the kind of devoted following Heath Moore did purely through his work on car interiors. A regular across the show's first 3 seasons, Heath built a reputation not just for his craftsmanship, but for his willingness to teach it, sharing techniques with up-and-comers rather than guarding his trade secrets the way some veterans do. Then, ahead of Season 4, he simply wasn't there anymore. Fans noticed almost immediately, and for a while, nobody knew why. The answer came from Heath himself. He revealed on Instagram that he has tested positive for COVID-19, and the illness hit him hard enough that he genuinely wasn't sure he'd survive it. In March 2021, he shared his negative test results, along with a caption that summed up what the ordeal had actually cost him: getting to hug his wife and daughter again, after wondering whether the virus would kill him in his sleep. He recovered, but he never returned to the show, and neither he nor Bill Carlton ever explained exactly why. What's certain is that Heath didn't slow down. He built out Heath Moore Interiors into a full family business, alongside his wife Rebecca and daughter Kira, and he's still running it out of Porter, Texas today. Whatever kept him from coming back to Texas Metal, it wasn't a loss of passion for the work. It was simply never explained, and Heath has let his craftsmanship speak for itself ever since. Tim Donaldson. Not every exit from Texas Metal Works came wrapped in mystery. Some were simply the natural result of a man deciding he was ready to build something of his own. Tim Donaldson was born and raised in Alvin, Texas, and cars were never far from his life growing up, largely thanks to his mother, who worked in the automotive field herself. That early exposure shaped him into exactly the kind of steady, knowledgeable presence Extensive Metal Works needed at the top of its crew. As shop foreman and general manager, Donaldson wasn't the loudest personality at Extensive, but he didn't need to be. Fans came to know him as the calm center of a crew full of bigger, brasher characters, the guy whose problem-solving and craftsmanship kept builds on track even when everything else on the shop floor felt chaotic. His love for animals became just as much a part of his public persona as his love for cars. Between his hands-on leadership style and his soft spot for rescue dogs, he built a reputation as one of the most genuinely likable people on the show. The kind of cast member fans rooted for even when he wasn't the one center stage. He stuck with Extensive and Texas Metal for years, becoming one of its most familiar faces well before he ever considered leaving. Then, around late 2022, something unexpected happened. Donaldson resigned from his post at Extensive after nearly a decade there, stepping away from the show entirely in the process, since Texas Metal's format ties its cast directly to Extensive's active roster. There was no scandal behind it, no falling out with Bill Carlton, no unexplained gap in the credits. It was a clean, deliberate decision by a man who'd learned the trade from the ground up and simply decided it was time to build on his own terms. Today, Donaldson works at Timmy John's Machining and Fabrication, a shop offering CNC machining, custom automotive parts, and billet accessories, alongside a familiar face from his Extensive days. And now, stay with us, because the story behind Vega's exit was tied to someone nobody could have predicted. John Villarreal Vega. John Villarreal Vega grew up loving automobiles from a young age, and he chased that passion all the way to Houston Community College, where he studied metalworking and custom painting before turning it into a full-blown career. At Texas Metal, he worked as a fabricator and head tech, all while staying deeply connected to his family's own business, Shorty's Hydraulics, splitting his time and talent across both. Vega spent roughly a decade at Extensive and Texas Metal, becoming a fixture of the crew almost as recognizable as Donaldson himself. Off-camera, he built a life around his craft in more ways than one, even picking up recognition as a lowrider hop and dance championship winner, a detail that speaks to just how deep his roots in custom car culture actually run. John Villarreal Vega married his wife Maria and settled into life in Houston, raising 2 sons alongside a career he has been building since he first walked through Extensive's doors. In September 2022, Vega left Extensive after 10 years there, and the timing wasn't a coincidence. He and Tim Donaldson had decided to build their next chapter together, co-founding Timmy John's Machining and Fabrication as full partners rather than going their separate ways. Between his shop background, his family's hydraulics business, and his championship pedigree in custom car culture, Vega brought a rare, well-rounded skill set to whatever came next. Together, Donaldson and Villarreal Vega proved that not every ending on this list has to be sad to be worth telling. Sometimes the most honest departures are simply 2 people choosing themselves and choosing each other to build with. Rudy Mora. Next up is someone whose entire run on Texas Metal barely lasted more than a season, yet still left enough of a mark that fans noticed the second he was gone. Rudy Mora joined the crew at Extensive Metal Works as lead fabricator, credited across just 7 episodes between 2020 and 2021. a short stretch by the show's standards, but one that was apparently enough to make him stand out among a much larger cast. Then, partway through his run, he simply stopped appearing, with no explanation offered on air. For a while, that silence was all fans had to go on. Rudy eventually addressed it himself, posting on his own Instagram on July 9, 2020, that he'd decided to step away from Extensive to pursue other goals. He never specified what those goals actually were, keeping the details of his next chapter entirely private. What he did leave behind was a tone that read as neither bitter nor dramatic. The comments beneath his post filled up with support from fans wishing him well, with nothing suggesting bad blood between him and Bill Carlton or the rest of the crew. That's genuinely where Rudy's story ends, at least publicly. Unlike Donaldson and Vega, there's no known business he opened afterward, no follow-up interviews explaining what came next, and no clear paper trail showing where his career went from there. He chose to keep that part of his life out of the spotlight. And unlike some names connected to this show, nothing has surfaced since to fill in the blanks. Now buckle up, because there are more shocking names for us to uncover. Spot Thomas. Texas Metal is worth watching, in part because of Spot Thomas. Known around Extensive Metalworks simply by that nickname, he served as the shop's parts manager, the guy responsible for tracking down the exact components needed to pull off some of the show's most ambitious builds, a role that rarely gets the spotlight, but keeps the whole operation running on schedule. He was not one of the fabricators or painters whose handiwork ended up on camera in the final reveal. His contribution happened earlier, in the unglamorous work of finding the right part at the right time, the kind of behind-the-scenes grind that makes everything else possible. At some point, without fanfare or explanation, Spot stopped appearing on the show. No farewell episode, no on-air acknowledgement, nothing beyond his name simply disappearing from the credits the following season. One outlet later speculated that his well-being played a role, framing the departure around the idea that mental health has become an increasingly common reason people step back from high-pressure environments. That speculation comes with an important caveat because it was never confirmed by Spot himself. In fact, there has never been a direct statement from Thomas explaining why he left. With no official explanation, many fans believed the real reason for his departure was never made public, allowing the rumors to grow over time. But then, out of nowhere, an unexpected answer surfaced, one that almost nobody was looking for. That answer came directly from Spot Thomas's own LinkedIn profile. According to his profile, he is now an independent business owner at Classic Truck Company in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. Rather than ending with a shocking twist or heartbreaking revelation, his story takes a much quieter path. There is no hidden scandal, no dramatic ending, and no unfinished mystery. Instead, it's the story of a man who spent years helping others find the parts needed to build other people's dream vehicles, and is now, away from the cameras and the spotlight, focused on building a dream of his own, one step at a time. Louis Jasso. Of all the names connected to Texas Metal, few carry a family legacy quite like Louis Jasso's. A third-generation wood coating specialist, Jasso comes from a trade passed down through his family long before any camera crew ever set foot in Extensive Metalworks. He appeared on the show for 3 episodes between 2020 and 2021, credited simply as the wood specialist, working alongside a crew otherwise built around welders, fabricators, and painters. His contribution was different from theirs, meticulous, almost furniture-grade finishing work that turned a raw wood truck bed into something that looked like it belonged in a showroom. His time in front of the cameras was brief, but here's the part most casual fans never got to see. Years later, Writing under his own name for the wood finishing platform Custom Grain, Jasso introduced himself plainly, a third-generation wood coatings specialist whose work fans might have seen on the hit TV show Texas Metal on Motor Trend. He never tried to inflate those 3 episodes into something bigger than they were. Instead, he used them exactly as they deserved to be used, as a small, real credential in a career that was always bigger than reality television. What came after tells the fuller story. Jasso went on to become president of Fine Finish Supply, a Houston-based wood coatings distributor carrying brands like Renner Wood Coatings, Surf Prep, and Apollo HVLP. Before that, he served as president of Elite Fine Finish, helping introduce high-quality, water-based Italian industrial wood coatings to the American market. And earlier still, he founded and built Finish Pro Refinishing from nothing. Along the way, Louis Jasso held a role as National Sales and Marketing Director at Dixon Enterprises, with earlier stops at Apollo Sprayers International and Renner, the very company whose products he would eventually go on to distribute himself. Jasso never really left the trade the way other names on this list left the shop. If anything, his few episodes on Texas Metal were just one small chapter in a career that was always headed toward wood finishing, television or not. He still writes and teaches today, publishing hands-on advice for builders on how to properly finish a truck bed, still speaking with the authority of someone who's been doing this since long before reality TV ever discovered custom trucks. Don't go anywhere, because not every name left on this list got to walk away with an ending this good. Clay Wells. Remember Clay Wells from Texas Metal, the guy who managed the diesel builds alongside his brother, Chase, and their father, Tommy, at One-Way Diesel Performance in Nacogdoches. For years, the family's story played out like a feel-good arc built for television. Guest spots on Texas Metal turning into their own spin-off. Texas Metal's Loud and Lifted, a small East Texas shop earning a national stage through hard work and faith. Then came the fall of 2024, and the story took a sharp turn few fans saw coming. A customer named Diego Singleton went public, saying he had paid the shop $50,000 for a build and been left with a broken pickup instead. He wasn't alone. Brad Extam, owner of a competing diesel parts company, escalated things further, posting videos accusing One-Way of cheating its customers and openly stating his goal was to put the shop out of business. At the center of it all sat a single truck, one that had reportedly changed hands between Extam and One-Way 4 separate times before a final tense delivery was filmed and posted for the public to watch. The Drive and Jalopnik both covered the fallout in late October and early November 2024, and both outlets were careful to note that nothing had been settled in court and that the shop could still be cleared of wrongdoing. No reporting singles Clay out individually beyond his role managing the family business. Still, the imagery is hard to shake. The same Motor Trend cameras that once filmed the Wells family celebrating their new show were replaced by a customer's own phone, capturing a truck changing hands for the 4th time, not as a triumphant reveal, but as evidence in a dispute playing out in public. Unlike Donaldson and Vega, who walked away clean, Clay Wells and his family are still living inside a story with no ending in sight. Valerie Nicole Rios. Not every name on this list left with a bang, and Valerie Nicole Rios is proof that some of the quietest exits are the ones that make the most sense once you actually look closer. As the office manager at Extensive Metal Works and the only woman on the main crew for most of the show's run, Valerie handled the side of the business that rarely gets glamorized on camera: the scheduling, the paperwork, the everyday operations that keep a shop this busy from falling apart behind the scenes. She appeared in 31 episodes between 2017 and 2021, a steady, consistent presence for the better part of the show's early seasons. Then, without any explanation on air, she simply stopped showing up in new episodes. No farewell moment, no dramatic send-off, nothing acknowledging her absence at all. For a show that occasionally gave its more colorful cast members a proper goodbye, Valerie's exit from the screen barely registered. But here's what separates her story from some of the others on this list. Her own LinkedIn profile still lists Extensive Metalworks as her current employer. That detail changes the whole shape of her story. This wasn't someone who walked away from the company, got fired, or vanished into an unexplained silence. It looks instead like she simply stepped back from being filmed while continuing to do the same job she'd always done, just out of view of the cameras that once followed her around the shop floor. Now, buckle up, because the last name on this list is someone who never once appeared on screen. Yet without him, your favorite reality show would never have existed at all. Bill Carlton's father. Before there was Texas Metal, there was a father with a piece of land and a welding torch. In 1976, he purchased a modest property off Sunny Drive in East Aldine, Houston, and opened a small shop there selling steel and welding supplies. He wasn't building a television empire. He was just trying to make an honest living with his hands, the same hands that would go on to shape everything his son eventually became. Bill Carlton grew up right there on that property, watching his father work on trucks and cars, turning rough metal into something functional, something built to last. That's where Bill learned to weld, not in a classroom, not on camera, but standing beside his father in a modest shop most of the world would never hear of. Everything that later defined Extensive Metalworks, the standards, the eye for craftsmanship, the belief that a piece of scrap metal could become something beautiful, started right there with him. His name has never been made public. He's never appeared on the show, never given an interview, never stepped into the spotlight his son now stands in every week. To some fans, he was a cast that, although never appeared, was the heartbeat of the show. What happened to him after those early years on Sunny Drive isn't something any source has documented. Not his current status, not his health, not whether he ever got to see what his lessons turned into. What we do know is this: the empire built on that land, the one millions of viewers now watch every week, exists because a man nobody has ever named decided to buy a piece of property and start welding. What do you think about these stories behind some of Texas Metal's most memorable faces? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more. Click on the next video showing on your screen. You definitely do not want to miss it.